she had got her baby out of the house, she would have been happy at that. That was what was important to her, to get some help. But she was actually seen at that window crying out for help, and it just didn't come to her in time. You know, the fire services did not arrive here in time to help her and her baby to get out of that house.
In a fire, every second counts. That's why these issues plague Old Court.
Why do you think Teresa and Christopher died in that fire?
Because the fire service never made it in time to get them out. There's no full-time fire service in Wicklow at all. The fire service is only 2 minutes away from the house. If there had been a full-time fire service, they would have been there straight away. And if they knew where all the fire hydrants was, they'd have been in there a lot quicker, instead of having the neighbours fighting to try and get in and get them out.
Robert Fennell is now rebuilding his life in Waterford with his new partner and children.
Let me make it up to you.
I had to quit work straight away and look after a 2 and a 3-year-old and try bring them up and explain to them that their mother and brother was no longer coming back, and then try help them rebuild their lives from it. I never had time to stop and think. My whole life has changed around totally in a day.
On the morning of the funeral, local fire researcher Noel Manning examined the fire scene.
And when they went in and checked, they went through every inch of the house, knocking down sections of the walls, the roofs, light fittings, light sockets, power sockets, and they found in the bedroom one of the support beams for the roof was burnt in a V shape.
Manning believed that the scorching here could mean a possible source of the fire in the light fitting, which had then fallen on the bed and spread rapidly. He made his views public. Bray Town Council's response was to call in its own fire consultant, Michael Slattery. He's a recognised Irish authority on fire. He ruled out an electrical fault in the ceiling light fitting. But his speculation that the likely cause of the fire was a smouldering cigarette on the bed or an electric blanket has angered the children's father.
He never found any physical evidence of an electric blanket. He never found any physical evidence of cigarettes in the room. The only physical evidence that was there was faulty wiring.
Mr. Slattery stands by his report and refutes any suggestion that he didn't carry out a proper and professional brief. But the cause of the fire has never been satisfactorily resolved.
I want to be able to tell them as they get older what was the cause of their mother and brother dying. If it was them, I wanted to get them help for it. If it wasn't them, I want to tell them what was the cause of it.
Old Court is still bedevilled by fires. Many of them have disputed causes. We looked at one house in Old Court where it's not the cause that's in dispute.
It's my own fault. I left cigarettes and a lighter on my fireplace, not realising that he could use a lighter because he's only 2. So he got curious and he just set his blanket on fire. When I came here, I could see the flames all in here. They were just coming out. So we just ran. I opened the front door, I looked in and the fire had engulfed the whole sitting room. By the time the fire brigade arrived, the fence, even at the neighbours' houses, there was all smoke coming out of them. And then the firebird came and they got to work.
The residents believe this spread of smoke between houses stems from their 80s refurbishment. Then, a second fire in Yvonne's in July last year, caused by a plumber repairing the house after the first. Catherine Kennedy, an activist with the Socialist Workers' Party, caught the aftermath on camera.
I opened the door and I couldn't believe the flames and everything else that was shooting out of the roof and the smoke and everything. You could see the smoke travelling along the fence. The smoke was even coming out the ESB box and the phone boxes at the side of the hall doors on the adjacent buildings.
Before refurbishment, the houses were timber framed and flat roofed. The refurbishment left the old structure virtually intact, and around it and on top of it was built the new. In the cavities between the two structures, the council insist there are adequate fire breaks. Even after the latest repair works in Yvonne's house, Noel Manning showed us how fire can still spread.
We're now at the separating wall, and we have found that there's absolutely no fire stopping here at the top of the party wall to the underneath of the roof covering. I can feel the draft there now on my hand, and that's the case right up along here. Now this is quite extraordinary, bearing in mind we just had a fire that spread into these attics via the party walls in the roof spaces.
And along the side walls, another ready-made route for fire. The cavity gap between the old house and the new.
So if we have a fire in the sitting room, the fire will be up through the house, right up into the roof, within minutes.
In the second fire in Yvonne's house, firefighters had to hack through plaster and hose into the cavities to stop the fire spreading. And inside the cavities, another problem: felt.
I'm just removing the panel off the wall in the bedroom, and this was the open cavity that we refer to, and you can see the sarking felt in here. This material is deadly. It's highly combustible, and it goes from the ground floor right to the roof.
How does it make you feel, like moving back in here and they've just put things back as they were, more or less?
Very nervous, to be honest, because the same thing had just happened and it's just gone again. You know, I'm very nervous.
Old Court's concerns have repeatedly been raised by residents and local councillors. Minister Dick Roche told Primetime all previous investigations indicated the fires aren't related to structural defects. A full structural audit was finally commissioned by Bray Town Council earlier this year. 2 decades on, we asked the local fire chief what he thinks.
It was a refurbishment carried out of those houses 20 years ago, and there was major structural improvements as well. But the question has been raised and it's been addressed as to there seems to be different views as to how safe the houses are, and that's why
your own view?
I'm going to wait the outcome. Again, I'll hold my counsel until the outcome of the audit by Bray Town Council.
An interim report from the audit is expected soon, Wicklow County Council told Primetime. But like Ross Road, the promise of an audit doesn't reassure residents. They're still finding failures. Just down the road from Old Court, Margaret Cahill found yet another problem with hydrants.
Last August there was a fire behind me here. When the fire tender arrived, they were behind just where you're standing now. They needed to go across to the cul-de-sac there to get a working hydrant. When they got there, they found it wasn't working. They moved to the next cul-de-sac down to get a hydrant. Again, found it wasn't working. They ended up at the very end of the estate here, right where the main road is, and that was the nearest working hydrant they were able to find. It was then discovered that there was actually 700 hydrants in the Bray area alone unaccounted for. This meant you had 700 hydrants that hadn't been maintained and hadn't been upgraded.
The council admit its hydrants could have been inspected more often. It started a review. It now says that if a hydrant isn't working, moving on to the next one doesn't present a problem for firefighters. But that means losing vital time.
This is something that we depend on for our fire service to be able to work fully and on time and speedily.
Last November, yet another life lost in Old Court. Teenager Lisa Kelly died in her sleep when a fire took hold in her bedroom. Lisa's parents are still too upset to appear on camera, but they too express concern about the condition of Old Court's homes. All the tragedies here have one thing in common: a disputed cause. Questions left hanging.